Good evening, Crime Talk aficionados. This is our live edition that we are having this evening. Now, we originally hoped that we were going to be on YouTube and Facebook, but I'm not sure anyone really works at YouTube. We were taken off of YouTube detention, and it says we're off of YouTube detention, but when you hit the little live button, it still says you're on detention. Of course, we've communicated with somebody, perhaps a computer at YouTube, because I'm not sure anybody really works there. And so, well, here we are, because the show must go on. And, you know, YouTube has the worst customer service in the world. What kind of business actually never lets you talk to anyone to help resolve a problem? It's completely beyond me. But enough about me. Let's talk about you all for a while. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Looks like we'll just go through a list here. Thanks, Cherie, Rebecca, Connie, Niet, Rebecca, Kathy, Missy. Thanks for tuning in. Let's see here. You know, on our live program, we usually kind of talk about the events of the day. We'll answer any questions that you all may have. Just put them in the comments section. I have them pulled up here on the big screen so I can try to read them. Now, one of the first questions I see that's popped up is a subject that we talked about today, and that was the Arbery case regarding the preliminary hearing relating to the McMichaels and Mr. Bryan. So it's that hearing did not go well for the defense, in my humble opinion. The court bound over all the charges for trial, which is still not good for the defense. And you know, not to say I told you so, but I had a lot of people give me a lot of grief on that Ahmaud Arbery case. And pretty much everything I had anticipated coming out of the preliminary hearing was that Mr. Arbery was literally chased down, cornered, and the people that were claiming that it was self-defense, you know, it looks like he was chased for quite a while, and he tried to get away on numerous occasions. And at one point, Mr. Bryan apparently told the police that he thought that he wanted to get into his car, like seeking help. In fact, he may have actually been hit by Mr. Bryan's car. And like I said, I got a ton of grief in the comment sections that I was, you know, jumping to conclusions. I wasn't giving anybody the presumption of innocence, et cetera, et cetera. And that was not my intention at all. And in fact, as I stated in the videos when we talked about the Arbery case, these are things that you as a defense attorney have to explain to your clients. You have to explain to them that there are some really bad facts, and the law is really bad for you, as it is in this particular case, Travis McMichaels. It came out today that the McMichaels both admitted that they did not have any personal knowledge whatsoever that Mr. Arbery had taken anything from the house that they were supposedly going to make contact with him. That is a bad fact, because everyone kept telling me it's a citizen's arrest. It's a citizen's arrest. He can make that citizen's arrest, and he's going to get off because that guy was stealing stuff. Well, you had to know that the person actually stole something, and they had to have actually stolen something. So the citizen's arrest analysis goes away. Then you have them chasing him around, Mr. Arbery around, and he's trying to get away, as evidenced by statements of Mr. Bryan and apparently the McMichaels as well. And you cannot chase somebody down, block them with your car, get out of the car, and when somebody has to fight because you're holding a shotgun in your face or your chest, that is self-defense. The initial aggressor, which everyone told me I was wrong about, and we've read the statute in Georgia as it relates, the case law, the case law supporting it, and the jury instructions. I'm not making this stuff up, but some people get so emotionally wrapped around a case that they look at one side and one side only, and they just completely ignore the facts of the case. And that's great if you just want to say, my opinion is right, the facts be damned, the law be damned. But, it's you can't ignore it. And any attorney, and, I've said this before, the job of the attorney is to have someone remove the emotion of the battle. I don't care if it's a civil case, a criminal case. In a criminal case, you have the defendant. You are meeting people always in a stressful situation. You're dealing with the district attorney who's dealing with families and victims, and it's a stressful situation. The attorneys are to be the ones, you pay the attorney to be the one to step back, remove themselves from the emotion of the battle, and give you clear advice. These are the facts. These are the good facts for you. These are the bad facts for you. How can we turn the bad facts into good facts for you? If we can. This is the law in your favor. This is the law that's not in your favor. That's just being reality. Even as an advocate, as an attorney, I can go in there with a client that has the worst case ever. It can be on video. It can have a confession. I can have eyewitnesses to say, that's my guy. And I will still try to do everything I can, but I still have to have that candid conversation with the client and say, we're going to lose. This is really bad. I'm an attorney, not a magician. I cannot pull a rabbit out of a hat on this particular case. And sometimes you go to trial on those terrible cases, hoping to make an issue that will give some rise on appeal that would maybe result in a reversal. But that's it. So it is, like I said, this Ahmaud Arbery case is just shocking to me, how people, for lack of a better term, just completely pick sides. Like he was, Mr. Arbery was a thief and he deserved what he got and he attacked these guys. No, where are you getting those facts from? You want to have an intelligent conversation, an intellectually honest conversation? Let's look at the facts in the law, not just what you think or want to come along. So let's see what else is going on in the world. Cindy, I want to know when charges will be filed in the district attorney's office. I'm assuming that's against the district attorneys. Probably never, but those district attorneys who reviewed that case may want to brush up on that resume because they probably deserve to be fired. Rhonda, what do you think about the Barry Morphew talking on camera unknowingly with a YouTuber? And I saw something that said that YouTuber believed that he knew that he was in fact being recorded, that Mr. Morphew knew he was being recorded, even though I guess he had told them that he wanted the camera off and, things were emotional and sensitive. I don't know. I mean, maybe he's just being friendly, neighborly. No idea. That case is also very odd to me. Anytime somebody disappears kind of out of the blue, you really have to, look at people that they're in relationships with, friends, family, enemies, maybe business relationships or something along those lines. Was it a personal thing they just packed up and left, or was there something nefarious and foul plays involved? You just don't know. It's just very, I don't know. There's some cases, and the Suzanne Morphew case is, I think, going to be one of them, as things go on. Sharon, Brunswick, Georgia here. We were even more shocked at the profanities by Travis over Ahmaud's body on his Instagram. It's likely a hate crime charge might be added. I know Georgia doesn't have a hate crime, but we see how it works, for example, on a federal level. I cannot disagree with you at all, Sharon. Originally, I didn't think that they would have enough for some sort of hate crime, federal violation of a hate crime. But then, as we learned at the preliminary hearing Travis McMichael and Mr. Bryan had some derogatory things to say about people of a different skin color. And I think that now definitely the possibility of a federal hate crime could in fact take place based upon that information. Would certainly show that there was something racially motivated behind it, not just out trying to be a good old neighbor, trying to protect the property and make that citizen's arrest. I don't think that preliminary hearing went well for anyone, the McMichaels or Mr. Bryan, and not looking good there, that's for sure. The thing that really surprises me is that the videotape that Mr. Bryan took, as I understand it, was given to the attorney. I think they maybe all consulted him. And for some reason, this attorney thought that this would be a good idea to leak that video to the press to show that, somehow this wasn't the way it was being made out in the press and the way people were talking about it. I'm not sure what that attorney saw there, but just me, little old Scott, your friendly local neighborhood criminal defense attorney, I thought, wow, that's not good. That's not a good video, and I certainly wouldn't release it. And now that attorney's probably thinking, boy, I sure hope I have something written in my file where the client's authorizing me to release this video, because they weren't charged until that video was released. Everything was pretty much going their way until that was released. So I would hope that attorney has a good memo to cover himself, because that's just bad. Now, we also, I think at one point, Mr. Bryan turned that video over to the police investigators, which is a little shocking to me why the district attorneys, the two previous district attorneys that had the case, didn't think that there was a problem with it. I can look up Georgia law and was able to read the law and the instructions relating to everything that's, been an issue thus far, and determine that there's a crime that's been committed. These guys got a free pass. For months, when the police wanted to arrest them that day, they should have been allowed to arrest them that day. And it was the district attorney's office that brought that up. And, we talked about that a little bit in our video that we had today, where people obviously with the case in Minneapolis with George Floyd, that, people are shocked that the police, do these things. And, everyone knows there's good police and there's bad police. And I've said this for years, and you can go back and talk to anyone I've talked to. The problem with the police departments is they don't get rid of their bad ones. And the bad ones make them all look bad. And the good ones should say, we don't want you here. You're not a good one. You're going to make us all look bad. And look what has happened to the police. Actually, some jurisdictions are talking about defunding the police departments. Now, do I think that's really going to happen? No, people need a police force, but they're going to, make it to such a point where no one will get arrested, or the police are going to be so afraid to arrest anyone in fear of, getting sued. And for as long as I can remember, police have immunity. The courts have created what they refer to as qualified immunity. If you violate somebody's rights, there's no real personal responsibility for a police officer. Sure, the city will have to pay, from their general fund money when police do illegal things. But for lack of a better term, most police don't have any skin in the game, so they don't care. It's not coming out of their personal checkbook. But if they were to get sued individually and have to start defending themselves in court and could lose, maybe they would have to ask themselves, is this really the guy that, I want to beat up? Is this really the guy that, we're going to push the limits that we know are wrong? Because for so long, and like I said, we mentioned it today. It's not just the police departments. Let's talk about the judges that can tell that a police officer is not credible on the stand, that their story makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And he still says, well, it's a close call, so I'm going to go with the police officer. Well, if it's a close call, it should go to the defendant, in my humble opinion. If it's that close, tie goes to the runner. That's the way it is. The runner is the defendant. And then you have prosecutors that you can say that give these police officers a pass and will defend them to the bitter end. And so it's very frustrating. So you can't just blame the police officers. It's going to have to be a change in the entire judicial system where everybody somehow gives these police officers, who do have a dangerous job, but they're public servants. They have to do it better and cleaner than everybody else, and realize that it's not us versus them, the police versus the citizens. Someone was trying to tell me the other day, and I don't know if it's true, but cop, police officer doesn't come with, how do you get cop? Well, my understanding is I was told that it stood for citizens on patrol, because they would literally have citizens patrol the streets at night. And that's how the word cop came about. And so maybe if the police officers thought that they were maybe more a part of the community and it wasn't just the police versus everybody else, things would get better. But it's going to have to be a systemic change in the sense that the courts and the district attorneys don't give these bad cops a pass, which has often taken place. And the stuff that we've seen, like George Floyd case up in Minneapolis, this is exactly, I've had clients all the time say, man, the cops came in, they beat me up, they did this, they stole my money, they took my wallet. It's like, how do I prove it? Now, if it's caught on video, that's great. But until then, this doesn't shock me. The case in Minneapolis with Mr. Floyd, it doesn't shock me at all. It shocks me that they killed the man, but it doesn't shock me that, the cops thought they could get, a little pressure there, kind of grind their knee into him a little bit, hold him down. That doesn't surprise me one bit. Happens all the time. You used to have cases, if somebody had an eluding case or they ran from the police at all, they got the crap beat out of them, and the cops are sitting there and the guy's covering his head and, quit resisting, stop resisting, stop resisting. And the guy's just getting the crap beat out of him. So it's nothing new. And if anybody thinks that, this was, a one-time incident, this kind of stuff never happens, like, you need to come out of your bubble. This is real stuff. Scott, you would know you listen too often? Okay. I've heard some people say that they think police officers should be tried by a military court. No, I don't think that would happen. Okay, constable on patrol. Use it a lot in the UK. I didn't know. So lots of, different things. But, think about it. Originally, the police force used to be the people. It's kind of like in the military. They used to have fire watch. They go out and they go out and walk the streets, and everybody takes their turn, and that's where it is. That's just how it is. I don't know. I saw a question here. You probably didn't have to tell them anything with the system being so flawed. Let's see here. What are your thoughts on Chad Daybell and the possibility of him getting arrested for possible involvement in Tammy Daybell's death? I don't know. Obviously, one could certainly say that the Chad Daybell situation with his wife, Tammy Daybell, looks suspicious. The fact that, she dies and 2 weeks later he is married to Lori Vallow. That certainly looks odd. An autopsy wasn't done. The body had been exhumed. But is it going to be, the type of thing where they can actually get any evidence to, in fact, determine, any cause of death? And even then, how are they going to prove it? I don't know, if they find, something in there that was determined to be natural causes of death. I think the first thing that would come to mind is, was there some sort of poison or something? Most coroners aren't going to look and say, just completely ignore if it was, asphyxiation or something along those lines. So, I don't know. I just simply don't know. It's the kind of thing we could speculate, but if the police had enough and they thought that he had some involvement and it was in fact a homicide, I'm assuming the police would go and arrest him, but they don't. And, that's a good thing and a bad thing, obviously, sometimes about our system is that we don't arrest people on hunches and suspicions and gut feelings. You have to have actual evidence that you can bring into court to comply with the rules of evidence and be able to convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt and, be subject to and withstand people poking holes in it on cross-examination. I just don't think, I'm not saying the man did anything to his wife. I have no idea. I have no evidence to support that. It looks weird, but who knows? Maybe he met the love of his life and he was in an emotional state and everything has an explanation. It's completely plausible and reasonable. Maybe, perhaps, who knows? But if the police, who are obviously looking into the circumstances surrounding it, haven't been able to find something, I'm assuming they don't have anything that they've been able to charge, obviously, up to this date. If they did, they'd go arrest the guy. If they thought that he was a complicitor with Lori Vallow and the children, Tylee and JJ, disappearing, they would charge him, but they don't have the evidence. DAs love to have multiple defendants charged with the same crime because you can sweat one and try to get one to roll on the other and testify against them. But that simply won't, it's not going to happen, at least not from the evidence that we know so far here. Okay, Cindy, this is not a dumb question, and referring to the McMichaels and the Mr. Bryan says, says the defendant when the defendant may also receive federal charges, would that person have two trials? Yes, because they are separate sovereign. All right, you got the federal government and then the state court, let's say Georgia, who has obviously a homicide statute, but they don't have a hate crime. The feds could bring a violation of Mr. Arbery's federal constitutional rights as under a hate crime statute there. And so, yes, there would be separate trials. And I can't remember the case off the top of my head. I can't remember the name, but there was a case in South Carolina where the police officer pulled a man over, a relatively minor offense or something, but the guy gets out of the car and the police officer literally shoots him in the back, and it's caught on video. He was charged with murder in the state case, and then he ultimately took a deal for 20 or 40 years in the federal case. The state case, I think, hung once or twice, but the feds, they're like, we got you. And he took a deal. I think it was for like 40 years or something along those lines. So you can have that. Now, normally, if you're prosecuted for a crime in the state court system or in the federal system, they will give deference to either party. Say, for example, if somebody is a prohibited person and they can't have a firearm, I can tell you in most states what happens is that there's usually an alcohol, tobacco, and firearm police officer, and They review every case where someone is a prohibited person, basically a felon or somebody with a DV conviction, and they find them with a firearm. The feds can pick the case up, and then the state usually won't prosecute them. In theory, they could, because they're separate sovereigns, separate states, and they could be charged with that offense. Another quick example: if you had stolen a car, say in state A, and you drive it to state B and they recover it, you can in theory be charged not only where the car was stolen, but where it was recovered. Same basic offense, separate jurisdictions, it can happen. So that is not a dumb question. Those issues come up all the time. Let's take another question here. Chad, referring to Chad Daybell, is very calculated, manipulative, and delusional, but he's very smart at the same time. We'll see if Alex's wife sings like a bird. Let's see here. Why don't they use polygraphs, or I think they call them truth serum, in major cases? I've never had a case in 25 years where anybody was administered any kind of truth serum. Why then, the next question is, do they not use polygraphs in major cases? Well, they're not admissible in court, okay, because they're not deemed reliable. Polygraph tests, in my humble opinion, are not always reliable. I have had people pass a polygraph test that I knew were absolutely guilty. I've had other people where I swore they were innocent and couldn't pass a polygraph to save their life. They can be manipulated, all right? They're not admitted in court because of the reason I just said. They can be manipulated. They're not correct, and they're open to interpretation as far as the results, the interpretation of those results when the little squiggly lines are moving. Most good interrogators, police interrogators, interviewers, detectives will tell you they know. They can care less about a polygraph test, okay? It is a tool of interrogation. That's all it is. Any good detective will tell you they just want the guy, the witness, whether it's male or female, they want the suspect to start talking to them. That's all they want, all right? And the more you can get somebody to talk, the more likely they're going to slip up and say something. The more likely they're going to say something that, ooh, let me have to try to explain that, and then they can't. Or the detective will say, oh, wow, you didn't pass the polygraph test. Boy, that's a shame. And you're a good guy. And, maybe you didn't do exactly what, we're thinking about. So why don't you tell me what you did? Maybe it's not as bad. And next thing you know, the person, confesses. I would never have a client take a polygraph test administered by a police organization. If I was going to have a client take a polygraph test, I would do it through a private polygrapher. And only then, if my client passed it, would I turn the results over to the district attorney. And that's only if I'm trying to convince the district attorney, of something like it's kind of a last resort. If they were reliable and district attorneys and police relied upon them, we would be using them all the time. But I don't put a whole lot of weight in them at all. Let's see. Claire Ricketts, polygraph should be illegal. I didn't know the officer who killed was prosecuted federally. That's good. Yes, that's the gentleman's name, Walter Scott. He was a police officer. I think it was in Charleston, South Carolina, maybe. But anyway, yeah, he ultimately went to federal prison. Let's see here. Scott, is it true that prosecutors cannot use evidence that was obtained from internal affairs? I read this somewhere. It makes no sense to me. Yes. Depending on the law of a particular state case law that's been developed, the police or the prosecutors usually do not get access to the internal affairs reports. Basically, we want the police to be able to talk, and the theory is that if you let the police talk candidly about what they did and why they did it, that if there was a training issue, that they would be able to go back and learn from it and train other officers so these kinds of things didn't happen again. But if they were looking at facing criminal charges, we're not going to get to know exactly what happened. It's kind of like an accident investigation. If a plane goes down, the investigators want to talk with everybody, and they tell them, tell us everything you know, good, bad, and ugly. What did you do wrong? Was it your fault? Was it the plane's fault? And that's the same kind of analysis or theory behind having the police basically have immunity when they talk to internal affairs. Most of the time, cops, nothing happens to them. If you don't talk to internal affairs, then or you lie to them, that's when they would get convicted. Do you think, next question, Nebi, do you think a jury would be more likely to give a guilty verdict for third-degree murder with the cops in the George Floyd case, or do you think that second-degree murder is going to be the lead to a guilty verdict? I mean, my correct answer is I don't know. A lot can take place. I'm assuming the defense attorneys for the police are going to focus heavily on what was the actual cause of death. We've had, obviously, the coroner up there in Minneapolis has amended his report, basically saying that Mr. Floyd had a heart attack, and I'm not using the fancy words that the officer put on there, which was complicated by the pressure and compression that the police officers used. Then the defense has had two doctors, one, of course, being Dr. Bodden, who, got a pretty extensive curriculum vitae as far as his experience, education, as well as cases that he's been involved with. And they say that it's murder. And everybody says that the manner of death is murder. The defense attorney's job is going to be to say that the cause of death was, unfortunately, Mr. Floyd, it's an unfortunate situation, but he lived probably a very poor lifestyle is what they're going to go after. The reports that I've seen have said that he had fentanyl in his system, right? Fentanyl is kind of the new thing that everyone's doing, when the heroin source runs dry, a little fentanyl, throw it in there. What they use to put you under when you have surgery. They combine it with drugs, and people are dying left and right. And I've also seen that Mr. Floyd had methamphetamine in his system. I'll take that as true. I don't know what amounts or what levels. But the defense attorneys, I believe, are going to have to attack the medical conclusions and say this was not a murder, but it was just an unfortunate event, and that these officers, were not the cause of his death, and it wasn't a murder. And, these police officers are going to get a lot of leeway at trial when it comes to presenting their defenses. A lot of jurisdictions have instructions as it relates to police officers that, if they reasonably believe that their life is in danger, they can do what they need to do. The police tactics as it relates to this whole knee chokehold situation is going to be a big issue. Was it excessive force? Well, the police are saying, at least one of the coroners, and I'm sure they'll be able to find more expert witnesses that will say everything was completely fine. There's no evidence of asphyxiation in any way. And unfortunately, I'm just, they'll say that their expert is there to say that he died of natural causes. The stress of the situation did that, but he could have been having a, altercation or not altercation, upset with traffic, and he could have had the same results. I'm assuming they're going to attack and try to disparage Mr. Floyd in any way that they can, whichever is legally permissible. But when you're dealing with somebody that is deceased, what's the first thing one's going to look at? They're going to look at his lifestyle. What lifestyle was he? Was he drinking? Was he doing drugs? How frequently? How often? They're going to run him through the ringer, and it will offend lots of people. But you have to remember the defense attorney is doing his job. His job is not to care about what's better for society, what's better for bringing about systemic change. The defense attorney's role is only to zealously represent his client. That's it. That's all his job is to do. And if his client walks out the door that day and there are more riots, it's not the defense attorney's fault. Blame the prosecutor if that happens. The way they've charged is basically this felony murder, that somehow they're committing a felony assault by this officer Chauvin, and he died. And the others are charged on a complicity theory. Well, like I said, I think there's one officer that is on the audio saying, should we turn him over, to return him on his side? It's going to be an interesting trial. I wouldn't expect anything soon. I would expect a trial probably within, a year maybe, that'll actually go to trial. And I was reading something that only one Minnesota police officer has ever been convicted of murder in the state of Minnesota. I think 4, what I had read, had been charged, and only 1 had ever been convicted. So if you're looking at those odds, these officers have a 25% chance of not, of 75% chance of winning. It just depends on the jury you get. It's going to be tough to get a jury. I mean, not impossible, but it's going to be tough. It's going to take some time. And, you're going to get the people that been locked in their bedroom, not paying attention to the world, just trying to figure out, okay, I can follow the law. I can listen, haven't formed an opinion. It's sad, but I think I can still listen to all the facts, reserve judgment till all the evidence is presented, and then follow the court's instructions. They're qualified. It won't be impossible. Where are they going to move it? I'm assuming the prosecutor wants that case in Minneapolis. I doubt he wants it moved to a jurisdiction outside of metropolitan area, for jury selection purposes. These are reality things. It probably will offend some people because I have a tendency and a way of doing that to apparently offend everybody, or just about everybody, by the time I open my mouth here. So, but that's reality. And those are the things the prosecutors and defense attorneys are going to be thinking about. Okay, this is in Minneapolis. Boy, do we ask for a change of venue? I guarantee you the defense will be moving for a change of venue. I would, and I'd be saying, I want it out in the, frozen tundra of Minnesota. Prosecutor's going to want to keep it in the metropolitan area. We'll just have to wait and see. Let's see. If you were defending the cops, would you use his positive COVID test to say that this was part of his breathing problem? I think any defense attorney representing the officers would have to say that it's something that would have to be explored. I mean, you have to understand, autopsies, they're done pretty quick after somebody is deceased. They can put them in, if anyone's ever been to a morgue. The new one here in Denver is really nice. It's kind of in a warehouse district. but it used to be in the bottom of the basement off of on 6th and Bannock over by the hospital and what have you. But now it's this big, new, beautiful facility, and they have a really, really good medical examiner here in Denver. He's a former Navy officer and medical doctor, obviously, forensic pathologist, and gave me a tour of it one day. And I mean, they can stick you in there and freeze you for quite a while. But for the most part, the deceased are going to be released to their family, so they have to go do things pretty quickly. They document it, they photograph it, but lots of different people from, we see it all the time. You can see it in the comments section, same facts, same law. People come up with different conclusions. And, medical doctors will come up with anything, and they'll say, based upon this information, I find that this is what happened. But if you add in this fact, it completely changes it. I think the defense attorneys, and they will be doing their job, will have to look at every possibility. And remember, these defense attorneys are not medical doctors. That's why, as attorneys, we have to hire expert witnesses in areas to tell us a lot of times what is the good question to ask, what is the question not to ask. The Police Protective Association up there in Minneapolis is going to be paying for the defense for all 4 of these police officers. They are going to spend whatever it takes to defend these gentlemen, and they will get a good defense. And the defense will hire experts. And, we've all heard the saying that, the experts will go out and say whatever they want. I mean, we have a civil case. I was talking to one of we have a doctor in a civil case. All he does is, do work for insurance firms, basically saying that, everybody is faking their injuries. There are doctors out there like that. There's experts in just about any field that'll say kind of whatever you want. You can find them. I don't like them because, it doesn't give you credibility. I like the experts to say, I can't help you on this one. The prosecution was correct. And they come back to you on the cases that they can help you and say they got it completely wrong. So they're going to find experts, and it'll come down to it's like the facts are not necessarily in dispute as to what got there. It's going to be the expert conclusions. Who's going to be more persuasive, explaining to the jury why whatever the officers did not cause it. Now, the other 3, Chauvin, he's got some real problems one way or the other. The other 3, they can say, hey, I knew nothing. Sergeant Schultz, I was just standing there. I was just kind of, I know nothing. I was just, assisting. I didn't know the guy was dying, for goodness sakes. If he had been dying, I would have stopped the whole thing. I was holding his feet. Or the other guy was standing up, shooing people away from the scene. He's going to say, how am I supposed to know? I mean, I'm focused on the crowd. So this is not a slam dunk for the Attorney General up there in Minneapolis at all to get there. Let's see here. Let's see, Karen. Now, I don't know. There are obviously other videos that have not been seen. People should wait until the evidence is presented. Did you see the baggie of white substance he dropped as well? Wait, that isn't a crime either. Not sure which case we're talking about there, Karen. If that is, are we talking about the Arbery case or the Floyd case? I'm not sure. Let's see here. So, anyway, quick kind of break here. Thanks for obviously tuning in this evening. We've had decent crowd. I wish we were also on YouTube, but YouTube detention took down the YouTube detention flag, but they apparently didn't flip the switch so we could actually still go live and be here on Facebook as well. So hopefully they can resolve that. But as I've stated before, and maybe this will probably get me further demonetized in some way, but YouTube has the worst customer service whatsoever. I'm sure it's all just a big computer somewhere trying to figure something out the way they do. But it's absolutely terrible, terrible. So we're there. Now, we've mentioned this before. Some people are like, oh, you shouldn't be doing this, Scott. But hey, we have people that have been willing to sponsor for only $4.95 a month. Sign up for the subscription. If you don't like it, you can cancel at any time. So CrimeTalkSearch.com, go sign up. We appreciate it. You're helping the sponsors that are helping us because we would like to bring you the best product that we can here at Crime Talk. We'd like to expand to it. If time was endless and resources were not an issue, we could literally do this 24/7. There's so much good stuff that is going on out there in the true crime genre, which is so good. They're saying my screen disappeared. Oh, okay. Oh, I guess I'm back now. Okay, sorry. So, that's why we have sponsors, because like I said, there's only so many hours in a day, and I can't do it all myself. If we didn't have Kyle here, doing the editing, doing the setting up, it probably would not take place. So, Kyle would like to be paid, and I'd like to be able to pay Kyle, and those types of things. So anyway, so we appreciate that. And like I said, we could do this 24/7. If I had enough of me's, so many things going on in my head that we could do with this. It's literally just a matter of time in the day to get it all done. And I don't think most people realize, even on a little live thing like this, it takes time to set up the cameras and make sure it works, and because it usually never works exactly the way you're supposed to the first time up, right, Kyle? I mean, it works much more smoothly for Kyle than it ever has with me. But the downloading, the uploading, editing, I mean, that stuff takes time. I think a lot of people think, oh, you just take your camera and you shoot, and next thing you know, it's up. And it's really not the case. And someone non-technical like myself needs someone like a Kyle that can do these things for me. So, see, Shannon understands. Hey, Kyle, thanks for what you do. Thanks, Kyle. We appreciate you. Let's see. I don't know if this question to me. Let's see. YouTube is algorithms with words. Yeah. Question. Is it true that a coroner trumps the police? No, not necessarily. No. Really, the person that makes charging decisions are the district attorney. However, if a coroner says somebody passes away of natural causes, or they say, hey, it's a gunshot wound and it's a homicide, if, you need and it's not, self-inflicted, you have to have the coroner to come in and state the cause of death and manner of death. So it's really the prosecutor, but the prosecutor's gonna have a tough job if the coroner is not on board with that. Let's see, Karen, I keep thinking about the riots in LA in 92 after the Rodney King verdict. Yeah, I mean that's the kind of thing I think a lot of people are going to have to think about, is whether, any kind of jury verdict that comes down, if people aren't satisfied or happy with it, think about it. Would you want to be selected for that jury trial? A lot of pressure on you. No matter what happens, not everyone is going to be happy. Whew. Welcome to my world. Welcome to my world. It's the kind of thing that you just can't make everyone happy. If, it It just doesn't happen. So imagine you're being a juror. If things go your way, the way that people like it, oh, it's going to be great. They don't like it, the city's going to burn. You think that should play into a factor that a juror should consider when making their decision? No. The prosecution has a heavy burden. It's going to be interesting to see. Why did you get banned from YouTube? Well, we didn't get banned. We got put in detention. They said our community standards, because if you look at their community standards, if you talk about sensitive subjects, you cannot, they can take you down. A sensitive subject will take you down, which is a little tough in the true crime genre, news of the world involving law and crime, because it's going to be sensitive. And, it's the kind of thing where somebody says, ooh, it's too sensitive. And I didn't like Scott's opinion, so we can, do that. And so some algorithm somewhere took us down, and they said, you're in YouTube detention. And we haven't been able to go live for a couple of months now. And now that the date has passed, they still haven't taken it down. It doesn't say we're in detention anymore, but it won't let us come out of detention. They're taking their sweet time. So anyone at YouTube that is listening, or somebody knows somebody at YouTube that's listening, hey, would appreciate it if you get us back. And I would give you a call out and say maybe YouTube was good. Whereas on the other hand, I have to call it the way it is. You can't get in touch with anybody there. And even if you do get in touch with anybody there, they basically say they have to rely upon the computer. That's crazy. You have to wait for the computer to do it. Very, very frustrating. What was that? Anything is a sensitive subject. You talk about, somebody has passed away, and the manner of death is homicide. The word homicide, you're not supposed to use the word homicide in your headings because you're promoting violence. Swear to God, that's what they tell you. And if you look at, for example, like our last 5 videos, not a single one of them monetized because somebody, after a manual review, they won't tell you what is such a sensitive subject, but they are going to limit the monetization, and it's not suitable for most of their advertisers. They won't tell you what, but yet, we have almost, 110,000 subscribers. So I'd like to think that maybe somebody is interested. If you look at our demographics, I think it's 80% females. You would think that there would be somebody that would say, I want my video to run at the beginning or in the middle or at the end of Crime Talk. But somebody at YouTube has decided for that advertiser, they don't want that. So we then will go get our own YouTube. There's always a solution to the problem. I am not going to sit back and let YouTube get the best of me and discourage me in any way. Ooh, okay. Julie handled insurance claims for 32 years. Okay. Due to decisions I made, received death threats. Someone tried to jump over a counter at me. Someone spit at me. So I understand being on the jury. Yes. You understand that you're never going to make everybody happy. Now, I understand there's one adjuster. I won't say who he works with, but he is the worst adjuster in the world. I literally have he is the worst. He is the worst. And when my attorney comes to me and says, this adjuster from this particular is the worst. Most of them are reasonable, and some of them are just the worst. And there's some people I think they like not making anybody happy at all. Are we off? Did it go away? Did I do something? You're still on. I'm still on. All right. Well, we're right about the 1 hour mark. So I think that will conclude our evening live. Hopefully by next week, we can have, we'll be back on YouTube, and we will be back here on Facebook, YouTubing and Facebooking live. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thanks. Please join our group. Go to YouTube and subscribe if you haven't done so. Watch our videos. Feel free to watch the videos that are monetized. And also, if you'd like to, we're going to go do a quick Patreon, which is a much smaller group. And if people want to ask further questions, we will do that next as well. So thanks for watching our live edition of Crime Talk, and we'll see you next week. Have a great day. CrimeTalk aficionados, this is Scott Reisch of CrimeTalk, and I'm here to tell you that everyone should have a background check subscription. Information is power. The more information you have, the better decisions you can make. Who would you possibly think you need to search? Well, how about the babysitter, the babysitter's parents, your kids' friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, anyone you're going to date, and maybe someone you just don't get that warm, fuzzy feeling at work. Go to the link, sign up for your easy subscription that you can cancel at any time, check social media presence, convictions, sex offender status, bankruptcies, and property. You could spend weeks doing what people finders can do in a matter of minutes. I have personally used this product. It has saved me a lot of time and clients a lot of money. I recommend you give it a try.